But no, that's been my week. I hear you got drunk. Well, I didn't hear. I definitely caught a little bit of it in the
Yeah.
replay because I was
Mm-hmm.
asleep when you did it.
Oh, right.
Golden Globes. You got drunk?
I did. Each time I got a prediction wrong, I ended up drinking. I don't know what the final tally was, and I definitely missed keeping track of it. I think I had
Ah,
26 categories, and I think for 12 of them, I was off. But the Globes this year were kind of predictable, and maybe we can chat a bit more in the news section. This is
of course.
gonna be the only news thing we talk about this week because it's a big one. The Globes happened, one of the, I'd say, probably biggest, I guess, award shows other than the Oscars and maybe for TV, the Emmys. They also, it's also like the in between, right? You get TV and you get film here as well. Now, Lachlan, did you have a look already? What won, or are you jumping in completely blind here?
I'm pretty much aware of what won, so you can't spoil it for me. I've seen all the
Yeah.
winners. I didn't watch the ceremony because I mean I could probably just assume, and
I mean,
I'm
me
just gonna see if
neither,
you
to
agree.
be
Was
fair.
the ceremony boring? Was the whole thing quite boring?
Well, I never got to watch it because regionally it's not available to me. So I had someone in Discord share his audio with me as we were reacting to it. So I never saw
Right.
anything of the Globes. It was quite
Okay.
underwhelming. Hopefully, we'll figure something out for the Oscars because I would actually like to see it. Yeah, it seemed, like I said, the winners were quite predictable. There's some shakeups in there, maybe that you don't
Yeah.
expect, like some films that some people counted out for the award season that now seem to be making a reappearance, right? Some more confidence to them. But I was quite excited for Gerard Carmichael to host it. But whenever I heard him, he was such an in between thing of just teasing the next announcer, which I guess is what you get to do at award shows. And in between, he made like jokes at the expense of the Globes, and it was like mainly like, "Ooh, look at this representation joke," and it was very boring in that way because it feels so hollow, and it wasn't very funny. But I
Sure.
mean, that's typically just the award shows, I guess. That's
Yeah.
usually, they didn't do like a lot of these bits in between. But they did have an extensive, I think, like 50-minute tribute for Ryan Murphy, the director of Dharma, and I do not like that guy. I hate him because I feel like he gets to do whatever he wants on Netflix, but we don't get Fincher's continuation of his show. Or just, I guess maybe he's back with The Killer. I don't know if that's a Netflix thing, but I just don't like his approach of like just exploiting serial killer shit. It just feels sensationalized, and it was just out of place to have like a 15-minute thing. And then they also did a whole bunch of I guess playing off some of the winners as they were not even that deep into their speeches, and for some of them they let them go on for on and on and on. So I mean, the typical thing that you'd expect from an award show.
Cool.
Lots of little annoyances, but Lachlan, let's talk about the winners, or I guess the losers here
Yes.
as well.
Yes.
I guess the biggest one, just to get into it. I don't know if we want to go over the acting stuff. I mainly am interested in some of the technicals, screenplay, and stuff like that. But the Globe split it up into comedy, musical, and drama. And in the drama section, The Fabelmans won. It went up
Wow.
against Avatar, Elvis, Tar, and Top Gun Maverick. And this was a bit of a category that was difficult to predict. If we had
Mm.
looked a couple years back, I think with the voting body from 5 years ago, probably Elvis would have won this. So interesting to see, well, Spielberg take this home, as well as like another award. He also won Best Director, which was a big surprise because both of us did predict that the Daniels would take this most
Yeah.
likely, and they didn't.
I was hoping for a clean sweep from the
Yes.
everything everywhere all at once team, because
Hmm.
that movie was wicked and it should get some awesome recognition from
Yep.
big nights like this and hopefully the Oscars in a couple of weeks time. I think the Oscars are
In
in a
March,
couple of weeks.
it's I think
March,
the
yeah,
12th of March, so we're still 2 months off,
yeah,
a
still
bit
2 months
less than two
away.
months off. Yeah.
But it's interesting that the Fablemans took away with Best Picture.
Hmm.
Um, I can definitely see why, and I've always described. I think I've run this joke into the ground that it's the most Spielberg film of all
Yeah.
time, as it's a Spielberg movie about himself. So you can see that there's probably a bunch of circle jerking going around in the sense that, hey, look, our good mate made a movie about himself, and it's actually also a very good movie at the same time. But
Yeah.
it's to go up against, two of the biggest blockbusters of the year, Top Gun Maverick
Mhm.
and Avatar Way of Water. Tar is probably one of the only undercutters in this category where I don't think there's a
Yeah.
lot of people who would have seen that, so it's a bit of an odd spot. But even Elvis, for a good maybe month of it being out, was a massive cultural thing, and
Oh, yeah.
obviously his performance gets noted because he did get Best Actor as well.
Yeah. Mhm. Well, who?
So you have
Kid
Austin
One?
Butler winning
Oh, Wilson Butler, sorry. Yeah.
in Elvis, up against a couple of pretty big hitting performances as well. But I think that it's interesting that Spielberg got a double whammy.
But I guess Spielberg wasn't the biggest winner of the night because, to me, a bit surprisingly, I mean, they took home 2 awards. Everything Everywhere got 2 for Michelle Yeoh as leading, and then Kede Kwan in supporting actor, which I think is
Yep.
pretty much a lock for the Oscars. He's been sweeping. I think he's been winning literally everything. There's some more interesting races when it comes to lead performance. I think supporting performance. There's a bunch of toss-ups, especially between Kate Blanchett and Michelle Yeoh, which here were split into two different categories. So they both ended up winning one. We don't get to see that at the Oscars because it's just one
Mm.
supporting lead category. But we'll do our predictions closer to when the Oscars are around for and when they get announced in I think 2 weeks time. But Martin McDonagh with the Banshees of Inisherin ended up taking home 3 awards for that film, with Colin Farrell in lead for the best screenplay and the best comedy musical, also etching out Everything Everywhere All at Once. So that was a bit
Yeah.
of a surprise.
Yeah. Again, I guess it's like the same thing. Uh, I'm a bit biased since it was my favorite film of last year, everywhere with
Yeah.
everything, everywhere, all at once. So doesn't mean it's like I'm disappointed because I still think that Banshees is a wicked comedy. It just wasn't my personal favorite from last year. Glass Onion getting nominated is a bit of a fucking joke, though. I will say that. Uh,
Yeah.
um,
Well, what else do you go
comparing it
with
to uh, for best comedy.
I mean,
I
it is a
mean,
comedy, right? I don't know. I don't know how many other
yes,
great I mean, I would have loved to seen Bros up there. I don't think well, Babylon, now that I've seen it, we'll talk about it next week. I mean, it's pretty funny, but it's I don't know if it's the main intention. Maybe that's even more musical numbers with that crazy score, which by the way, Babylon ended up taking just 1 award home for best score. It's also sweeping. Having seen the movie and now I've been listening to the score, it is a crazy score, but it's actually like really good as well.
okay.
Um, but yeah, I mean, Glass Onion. What else would you put in there? All Quiet on the Western Front. What's the fifth comedy of
Yeah,
the year
sure.
that's
All
big?
Quiet on the Western Front sounds like a great idea, Ewan, to chuck
Yeah,
into a
no,
comedy slash
yeah.
musical. I don't know. I mean, a comedy slash musical.
Maybe an actual
That's a
musical of the
difficult
year. We
one.
didn't get that many, to be honest.
Yeah.
So I feel like the strongest ones are represented here, and that was an interesting thing as well, because Glass Onion, after it released on Netflix, its ratings actually dropped. It was way better when it was
Mm.
just in theaters, and once it did hit Netflix, some of the some worse ratings came in. But overall, I feel like it's an interesting shakeup. I think Everywhere is not sweeping everywhere just yet. I still feel like it is probably the front runner for the Oscars at the moment, but at least like in directing as well as in screenplay, because Banshees and Everything is in
Mm.
the original screenplay, and at the
Yeah.
Globes they don't do a differentiation. But the best screenplay, original screenplay award is way more packed this year. When we get to the Oscars, because we do have The Fablemans, Banshees, and Tar, as well as Everything Everywhere in there. That's gonna be quite an interesting race to follow. But
Question for you, Ewan. Thoughts on
yes,
the Best Picture Non-English Language award
yeah,
with
that's such a meme.
1985, Argentina
Okay, so
1985.
you've seen the Trial of the Chicago Seven, right? The Aaron
Yeah,
Sorkin film.
yeah, yeah,
It's that, but Argentinian. It is like
yeah.
it's
Sure,
nothing interesting other than the subject itself, but it's not
sure.
presented in any sort of interesting way. And I would literally give the award to any of the other 4 films nominated there, even though I wasn't a big fan of RRR myself, and that's been getting heaps of love. Like some people actually really wanted to be nominated for Best Picture as well because it's not nominated for the It wasn't submitted by India for the international Oscar, so it won't be appearing there for anyone who's had their hopes up. All Quiet on the Western Front, Close, and Decision to Leave are all amazing films. They're all in my top 15, I think, of last year. And
Mm,
Argentina 1985 is very much like lower there. It's solid film, but not. Oh, I feel like the awards were probably split on this because we do have a strong
mm.
year for a lot of these international films, and somehow Argentina ended up winning. I don't know how, but that's probably the most surprising thing that happened that night. Other than, I guess this bridges us over to what we've been watching, because Kevin Costner won best male lead performance in a TV drama series
Yeah.
for Yellowstone, which was also a
Yeah.
bit surprising.
I don't know if it would be a bit surprising since I'm making my way through Yellowstone at the moment, and that's mainly
Yeah.
why, because I saw that, and you know how a couple weeks ago when we were just talking about our favorite films of
Hmm.
2022, how I kind of said I missed out on a lot of television.
Yeah.
I decided that I'm going to watch a lot of television. So I guess we're moving into what we've been watching now.